Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be looking at Laurence G. Bolt's Zen and the Art of Making a Living.
Okay.
And, this is really all about work and how to find fulfilling work.
Right.
We're going to be kind of extracting Bolt's unique philosophy on work,
Yeah.
and we're going to be looking for practical tips and advice
Yeah.
that you can use to try and find fulfilling work in your own life.
Hmm.
And hopefully it's going to inspire all of us
Yeah.
to maybe think a little bit differently about our own career paths.
That's a great goal.
Yeah.
I think Bolt's approach is really fascinating because he doesn't just offer, like surface level advice.
Yeah.
He really digs into, the underlying forces that are shaping the modern workplace.
Right.
And how those forces actually impact all of our individual career choices.
Exactly. And he doesn't sugarcoat things either.
No, it doesn't.
He kicks off the book, by painting this pretty stark picture of what he calls the changing landscape of work. So I'm really curious to get your take on this. What are some of the major shifts that Boldt highlights? And how do you think they're playing out in your own work life?
Okay, well, one of the biggest trends that Bolt points to is globalization.
Mm.
It's not just about competing with other people in your city or your state for jobs anymore.
Right.
It's a global talent pool,
It is.
which can be both exciting but also, pretty intimidating.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely adds a whole new layer of complexity
Yeah.
to the job search and everything.
Absolutely.
I imagine it also puts a lot of pressure on companies to stay competitive.
Yeah.
Which maybe explains Bolt's next point, which is merger mania.
Yeah, exactly. We're seeing this constant wave of mergers and acquisitions
Great.
with companies, gobbling each other up at an alarming rate.
Yeah,
And even when those companies are profitable, we often see layoffs
right.
as they try to restructure and streamline their operations.
Yeah,
And that really creates a sense of instability and uncertainty for workers at all levels.
definitely. It almost feels like job security is becoming a thing of the past.
Yeah,
You could be doing great work, exceeding expectation,
totally.
and still lose your job because of something completely out of your control.
It's a real fear for a lot of people these days.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, the electronic revolution.
Yeah,
Technology is evolving at such a dizzying pace,
it's insane.
automating jobs left and right,
Yeah.
requiring workers to constantly adapt and learn new skills just to stay relevant.
Absolutely.
It's enough to make anyone feel anxious about the future of work.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's like the skills you learn in college might already be obsolete by the time you graduate.
Well, for sure.
But I think Bolt's point is that instead of panicking or
Yeah.
trying to cling to those old ways of doing things, we need to embrace these changes
Yeah,
and see them as opportunities to grow
totally.
and reinvent ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's not just about adapting to new technologies.
Yeah.
But it's also about recognizing how these shifts are
Mm.
changing the very nature of work itself.
Yeah.
The rise of outsourcing, for example, has led to this surge in temporary and contract-based work,
That's true.
which, on the one hand, that can be great for flexibility,
Yeah.
but it also makes it harder to build long-term stability and financial security.
Right. And speaking of things that are being disrupted, Boldt also talks about the dominance of mass retail
Yes.
and how it's squeezing out all of those small businesses
Right.
and local jobs.
That's right. The rise of big box stores and online retailers has definitely had a profound impact
Yeah,
on local economies,
absolutely.
often leading to job displacement and a decline in the diversity of available work opportunities.
Yeah, so it sounds pretty bleak.
It does sound a little bit bleak.
But I know Boldt is
Yeah.
actually an optimist at heart.
He is.
So what's the silver lining here?
Well, he argues that these very same forces that are creating uncertainty and upheaval are also opening up new possibilities,
Okay.
particularly for those who are willing to embrace entrepreneurship and forge their own paths.
So instead of seeing these changes as threats,
Yeah.
we can actually view them as catalysts
Exactly.
for creating something new and innovative.
Mhm.
I like that perspective.
Yeah.
But it's easy to say embrace change when you're feeling really secure and
Right.
confident in your abilities.
Yeah.
What about those who are maybe struggling to keep up?
Mhm.
What advice does Boldt offer for people like that?
Well, he acknowledges that it can be really daunting,
Yeah.
especially if you're feeling stuck in a job that no longer feels fulfilling
Right.
or aligned with your values. But he also emphasizes that you have more agency than you might realize.
Sure.
You don't have to be a passive victim of these changes.
Right.
You can actually choose to proactively shape your career destiny.
So it's really about taking ownership
Yeah.
and finding ways to leverage these shifts to your advantage.
Absolutely.
But where do we even begin?
That's a great question. And that's where Boldt's concept of the little king myth comes into play.
Okay, the little king myth.
Yeah, he argues that many of us have bought into this myth without even realizing it.
Okay.
It's this idea that work is all about climbing the ladder, chasing those external rewards.
Yeah, like a bigger salary or a fancy title.
Exactly. And striving to become the king of our own little domains.
Yeah, I think a lot of us were raised with this climb the ladder mentality. You know, you work hard, you get promoted, and eventually you reach the top, and then you're finally happy and successful.
Right. And Boldt is suggesting that this pursuit of external validation can actually lead us further away from true fulfillment.
So it's actually a recipe for burnout,
Yeah.
disillusionment, and just kind of a constant sense of striving that never really leads to satisfaction.
Exactly. It's like you're always chasing the next rung on the ladder.
Yeah.
But the ladder never actually ends.
And meanwhile, you're missing out on all the scenery along the way.
And more importantly, you're missing out on the opportunity to define success on your own terms. Boldt challenges us to question this little king myth and consider an alternative vision, one that emphasizes creative self-expression, service to others, and finding work that aligns with our deepest values.
So what does he call this alternative vision?
He called it work as art.
Work is art. I love that.
Yeah.
Work is art. I love that framing. It immediately shifts the focus, you know, from simply earning a paycheck to creating something meaningful and fulfilling.
Right.
It makes me think of, like, you know, those artisans you see who are so passionate about their craft, whether it's woodworking or pottery or even baking.
Right.
They're not just going through the motions, they're pouring their heart and soul into what they do.
That's exactly the kind of energy Boldt encourages us to bring to our work.
Yeah.
You know, he argues that when we view work as an art form, we tap into this deeper level of creativity, purpose, and even joy. And it becomes less about external validation and more about expressing our unique talents and making a genuine contribution to the world.
I love that.
Yeah.
But how do we practically apply this work as art concept in a world where most of us aren't, you know, literally creating art for a living?
Right.
I work in a pretty corporate setting.
Yeah.
And while I appreciate my job, it doesn't exactly feel like a blank canvas for creative self-expression.
That's a great question, and I think it's something a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
Boldt acknowledges that not everyone has the luxury of, you know, pursuing a traditional artistic career.
Right.
But he believes that those principles of work as art can be applied to any job, regardless of the industry or job title.
So even if you're not a painter or musician, you can still approach your work with an artist's mindset.
Exactly.
I'm curious to hear more about what that looks like in practice.
So one key element is finding alignment between your work and your values.
Yeah.
Boldt encourages us to identify our core values. You know, those guiding principles that are most important to us?
Right.
And then seek out work that allows us to actually live those values out in a tangible way.
So, for example, if environmental sustainability is a core value for you, you might look for a job with a company that prioritizes eco-friendly practices. Or maybe consider a career in renewable energy.
Exactly. Or if social justice is a driving force for you, you might explore opportunities in the nonprofit sector.
Right.
Or work for a company with a strong commitment to diversity and inclusion.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your work feels both personally meaningful and aligned with your deepest beliefs.
Yeah, values alignment is super important.
It is.
But it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Right. Boldt also talks about the importance of finding work that lets you use your unique talents and strengths.
Absolutely. He argues that we all have, you know, unique gifts and abilities that we can bring to the table. And that when we find work that allows us to leverage those strengths, we're more likely to feel, you know, energized, engaged, and fulfilled.
It's like finding that perfect role where your skills and your passions kind of intersect.
Totally.
You're not just going through the motions, you're operating in your zone of genius.
Right, and that not only benefits you,
Yeah.
but it also allows you to contribute at a much higher level.
And that sense of contribution is another key element of this whole work as art thing,
Mm-hmm.
Boldt encourages us to think beyond our own personal gain
Yeah.
and consider how our work can benefit others, whether it's our colleagues, our customers, our community, or even the world at large.
It's about finding that sense of purpose
Yeah.
beyond just earning a paycheck.
Exactly. It's about making a positive impact
Yeah.
and knowing that your work is making a difference in some way.
And when you combine values alignment,
Yeah.
the use of your unique talents, and a sense of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
that's when work starts to feel less like a job and more like a calling.
Right. It's that feeling of being fully aligned with your work, where you wake up each morning feeling excited to tackle the day's challenges.
Exactly.
But I imagine finding that kind of alignment isn't always easy,
Right.
especially in today's ever-changing job market.
Yeah.
So Boldt doesn't shy away from the practicalities of finding fulfilling work.
He doesn't.
In fact, he dedicates a whole section of the book to what he calls aggressive job search strategies.
Yeah.
What makes these strategies so aggressive?
Okay. So Boldt argues that in today's competitive job market,
Mm-hmm.
passively sending out resumes and waiting for someone to call you back
Yeah.
simply isn't enough.
Right?
You need to be proactive, strategic, and yes, even a little bit aggressive in your approach.
Okay.
He encourages job seekers to think of themselves as entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
marketing their unique talents and skills to potential employers.
So it's like you're the CEO of your own career,
Exactly.
creating your own personal brand and taking ownership of your job search journey.
Yeah. What are some specific examples of these aggressive strategies?
One key strategy is targeting specific organizations that align with your values and goals.
Okay.
So instead of blindly sending out resumes to any company with an opening,
Mm-hmm.
Boldt recommends doing your research
Yeah.
and identifying companies whose mission, culture, and values really resonate with you.
So it's about quality over quantity.
Exactly.
Really focusing your efforts on those companies that you'd be most excited to work for.
And once you've identified those target companies,
Yeah.
Boldt suggests going beyond just that traditional application process and finding creative ways to get your foot in the door.
Right.
This might involve networking with people who work at those companies,
Yeah.
reaching out to hiring managers directly, or even attending industry events where you can connect with potential employers face to face.
He's been being proactive and finding ways to stand out from the crowd.
But networking can feel intimidating to some people,
Yeah.
especially those who are naturally introverted
Right.
or not comfortable with self-promotion. What advice does Boldt offer for those folks?
He acknowledges that networking can be a challenge, for sure.
Yeah.
But he emphasizes that it's not about being fake or pushy.
Okay.
It's really about building genuine relationships
Mm-hmm.
and having authentic conversations with people
Right.
who might be able to offer you insights, advice, or even job leads.
So it's less about working the room and more about making those meaningful connections.
Exactly. And even if those connections don't lead to a job right away,
Yeah.
they can still be really valuable for expanding your network and gaining insights into different industries and companies.
And Boldt also encourages job seekers to think outside the box
Yeah.
and consider alternative paths to the desired career.
Right.
This might involve taking on internships or freelance work or even volunteering in related fields to gain experience and build up your resume.
It's about being resourceful and finding those creative ways to gain relevant experience,
Absolutely.
even if it's not through a traditional full-time job.
And speaking of creative approaches,
Yeah.
Boldt also mentions a strategy that might surprise some listeners.
Oh, yeah. Walk-ins.
Walk-ins. He suggests that in certain situations, literally walking into a company
Wow.
and expressing your interest in working there
Bold.
can be an effective way to make a memorable impression and potentially land an interview.
I can see how that would be risky,
It is risky.
but it could also really pay off.
Yeah, it takes a lot of confidence and a bit of courage, but it could be a game changer in a competitive job market.
Bold also stresses the importance of self-marketing,
Yeah.
both in person and online.
Okay.
This might involve, crafting a compelling resume that highlights your skills and experience,
Right.
building a strong online presence through LinkedIn or a personal website,
Yeah.
or even creating a portfolio of your work to showcase your talents.
So it's about presenting yourself in the best possible light
Exactly.
and making it easy for potential employers to see your value and understand how you can contribute to their organization.
And this ties back to Bolt's idea of work as art.
Okay.
When you approach your job search with the mindset of an artist showcasing their work,
Yeah.
you're more likely to put in the effort to create those high-quality materials and present yourself in a really compelling way.
So it's not just about having the right skills and experience.
Yeah.
It's about packaging those skills and experiences in a way that captures attention and makes you stand out from the competition.
Exactly. And when you combine these aggressive job search strategies with Boldt's work as art, philosophy, you create this really powerful formula for finding work that's not only financially rewarding,
Right.
but also personally meaningful,
Yeah.
aligned with your deepest values and aspirations.
So it's like you're not just looking for a job. You're on a quest to find your calling.
Exactly.
But with all of these strategies and ideas swirling around, it can be tough to know where to start. So what's one concrete action a listener could take today
Okay.
to move their job search forward, even if it's just a small step?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And, Boldt actually offers a really practical framework for turning those big picture aspirations into actionable steps.
Okay.
It's what he calls the 4 pillars of a fulfilling life's work.
The 4 pillars. I like it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into these pillars because I think they can offer some tangible guidance for anyone feeling lost or unfulfilled in their career.
Okay, so let's break them down one by one.
Sounds good.
Starting with integrity. What does it even mean to build a career based on integrity?
So for Boldt, integrity is about doing work that you genuinely care about.
Okay.
Something that resonates with your core values and beliefs. It's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm proud of the work I do and the impact it's having on the world.
It's that sense of alignment between your actions and your values.
Exactly. You're not just going through the motions.
Right.
You're showing up authentically and doing work that feels true to who you are.
And this can look different for everyone, right?
Oh, for sure.
It might mean working for a company whose mission aligns with your personal beliefs, or choosing a career path that allows you to make a positive impact on a cause you care about.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your passions and your principles kind of intersect.
Which brings us to the second pillar, service. How does Boldt define service in the context of work?
So service is about recognizing that our work has the power to make a difference in the lives of others.
Okay.
It's about using our skills and talents to contribute to something larger than ourselves, whether it's serving our clients or our community or even the world at large.
It's that sense of purpose that comes from knowing your work is having a positive impact.
Yeah, it's not just about what you're getting out of it,
Right.
but also about what you're giving back.
And this doesn't have to involve, huge gestures or heroic acts.
Right.
Even small acts of service in our daily work can make a difference. Totally.
Whether it's helping a colleague solve a problem, going the extra mile for a client, or simply showing up with a positive attitude and a willingness to help.
It's about shifting that focus from me to we.
Right.
And recognizing the interconnectedness of our work and the impact it has on the people around us.
Which leads us to the third pillar, and this one is especially close to my heart, enjoyment.
Oh, I love this one.
Boldt emphasizes that finding work that you genuinely enjoy is crucial for long-term fulfillment.
Yeah.
It's not about, every task being a thrill ride,
Right.
but overall your work should bring you a sense of satisfaction, engagement, and even joy.
For a long time, I thought enjoyment was like a luxury when it came to work.
Yeah.
Like it was something you hoped for, but couldn't necessarily expect.
But Boldt argues that it's actually essential for both our well-being and our productivity.
He's right. When we enjoy our work, we're more likely to be engaged, creative, and productive.
Totally.
We're also less likely to burn out.
Feel resentful or just go through the motions.
It's like that saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
I love that one.
Now, of course, there will always be challenges and tasks we don't enjoy.
For sure.
But overall, our work should feel like a source of energy and inspiration, not a drain.
And finding that enjoyment often comes down to understanding our strengths and talents. What are we naturally good at? What activities make us feel energized and engaged?
Right.
When we align our work with our natural abilities, we're more likely to find it enjoyable.
It's about playing to our strengths and finding roles that let us shine.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the final pillar, excellence. What does Boldt mean by striving for excellence in our work?
So excellence isn't about perfectionism or comparing ourselves to others.
Yep.
It's about committing to doing our best work, bringing a sense of craftsmanship and dedication to everything we do.
It's about setting high standards for ourselves and constantly seeking ways to improve and grow in our chosen field.
All right, it's about taking pride in our work
Yeah.
and striving to create something of value.
Yeah.
whether it's a well-crafted report,
Hmm.
a beautifully designed website,
Yeah.
or a seamlessly executed project.
And I think this ties back to the whole work as art concept.
Absolutely.
When we view our work as an art form, we naturally want to create something beautiful, meaningful, and impactful.
Yeah, we're not just clocking in and out.
Right.
We're pouring our hearts and souls into what we do.
And that dedication to excellence not only benefits the quality of our work,
Yeah.
but also brings a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction.
It's that feeling of accomplishment that comes from knowing you've given it your all.
So we have these 4 pillars: integrity, service, enjoyment, and excellence.
Yeah, they seem pretty straightforward in theory,
I do.
but I imagine putting them into practice in the real world can be a bit more challenging.
Right. So what advice does Boldt offer for actually integrating these pillars into our work lives?
Well, he emphasizes that it's an ongoing process, not like a one-time fix. It's about making those conscious choices in our careers and in our daily work that align with these principles.
So it's not like you check these boxes and you're done.
Right.
It's about constantly reflecting on your work,
Yeah.
making adjustments, and striving to create a career that truly reflects these values.
And he encourages, readers to regularly ask themselves some key questions.
Like what?
Like, does my work align with my values?
Mm-hmm.
Am I using my talent effectively?
Yeah.
Am I making a positive contribution?
Right.
Am I finding enjoyment in what I do?
Those are great questions to reflect on.
Yeah, and I think they can be helpful,
Mm,
whether you're just starting out in your career or looking to make a change.
absolutely. He also stresses the importance of self-awareness,
Huge.
understanding our strengths, our weaknesses, our values, our passions,
Yeah.
is essential for finding work that truly fits.
It's about knowing ourselves and what we want out of life,
Right.
and then having the courage to actually pursue it.
And that might involve taking risks, stepping outside of our comfort zones, and even challenging the status quo.
It's about being proactive and taking ownership of our career journeys,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just waiting for someone else to hand us our dream job.
And Boldt reminds us that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Totally.
It's about embracing the challenges,
Yeah.
the setbacks,
Yeah.
the unexpected twists and turns along the way.
Because those experiences often lead to the most valuable lessons and growth opportunities.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Boldt's Zen and the art of making a living, what's one key takeaway you hope listeners will walk away with?
I hope they'll be inspired to view work not just as a means to an end,
Yeah.
but as an opportunity for creative expression, personal growth, and meaningful contribution.
I love that. And I hope they'll feel empowered to take ownership of their careers and create work lives that are both fulfilling and impactful.
Boldt reminds us that we all have the potential to find work that aligns with our values, utilizes our talents, and brings us a sense of purpose and joy.
So as we leave you today, we encourage you to reflect on those 4 pillars:
Yeah,
integrity, service, enjoyment, and excellence.
absolutely.
And consider how you can incorporate them into your own work life.
What small step can you take today to move closer to a career that truly reflects who you are and what you want to achieve?
Remember, it's an ongoing journey, not a destination. So be patient with yourself, embrace the process, and never stop exploring the possibilities.
And most importantly, trust that you have the power to create work that is both meaningful and fulfilling.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of work. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to create work that matters.